How do I leave home for the first time and make sure that I'm going to succeed? That first step, leaving home towards being a better Aussie man, is what we'll be looking at today. I think most people would love to be able to move out of home into a mansion with a view of the ocean, or live somewhere up in the mountains. Everyone has their dream home, but the reality isn't quite like that for most people. When you first move out of home, it will be into something basic. And the key to this is the term basic. It's a base, a beginning on which you build. And you need to consider that your basic needs are what you have to look at first when you first venture out of your own. So to get your head around what our needs are, I want to talk quickly about a guy called Maslow. He thought about all the different needs we have and put them in an order, and he called this order the hierarchy of needs. Essentially, he said that there are levels of needs in our lives, and we can't access the higher levels until our lower levels are met. It's these lower levels that need to be at the forefront of your mind when you're planning on moving out of home. Air, water, food, shelter, sleep and clothing are the primary considerations in the hierarchy. These are our physiological needs, the base things we need to operate biologically. When we were hunter-gatherers, we would have gone out and obtained these by ourselves or in groups. Modern society doesn't quite work like that, and our supply of food, water and clothing is now out of our direct control. Someone else produces them and we need to buy them. So naturally, this leads us to money through employment. And employment is on the second level. On the second level, you'll also see other items that link to our sense of safety, not just surviving like in the first level, such as health, property, personal safety and resources. The next three levels start with love and belonging, which talks about our need for connection with others through friendship, intimacy, family and community. Then it goes up to esteem, which looks at respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength and freedom. And then the final level has self-actualization, the desire to become the most that one can be, sometimes seen as spiritual enlightenment, by achieving one's full potential, including our creative activities. Now we understand the hierarchy of needs, we can start to see how it links to our aim of leaving home or moving out for the first time. So, step one, you're going to need somewhere to live, but this doesn't come for free. So you'll either need ongoing employment or need to have some other form of financial support. If you're leaving home and moving to another city to study, then you may be able to access some support from the government. The levels of support and eligibility keep changing. So if you think you're eligible, you need to contact the appropriate government agency. Now it used to be called Centrelink, but it's now currently Services Australia. Step 2. Now that you have access to money, you need to think about 3 questions when choosing where to live. First one is, do I have a car to get to work or study, or can I use public transport, or am I going to use a mix? This question helps you choose possible locations. The second question is, do I want to live by myself, with my partner or with other people? And the third question is, how much can I afford to spend on rent? Do I have enough money set aside for bonds and utilities? Now let's break down each of these questions in a bit more detail. The first looks at location. There are many things to consider when it comes to location. How far are you willing to travel to work? Will you get there by car, bicycle, walking or public transport? Do you want to be close to family or friends? Or is the access to certain amenities more important, such as the city or open space? Once you have an idea of these requirements, you can go ahead and use this information to create a list of suitable suburbs, towns or cities in which you'd prefer to live. Try not to be too restrictive at this point and list them in order of preference. Okay, now you have a list of possible locations. It's time to consider the living arrangements. You need to make a decision on your preference of living alone or with others. The first option is that you may be in a situation where both you and your partner would like to move in together, either into a new home together or you moving into their current home. The second option is that you may be interested in living by yourself to begin with. While this option can make you feel truly independent, it is the most expensive, as you're responsible for all the bills, gas, water, electricity. The third option is to share with others, maybe a group of friends or into a share house arrangement. You need to consider with both sharing options, with a partner or in a share house, if you will be on the lease of the property and also be paying bond. Most states have tenancy advice services that will help you understand the implications of being a signatory to a lease. Some links are below. Now you've decided on your living arrangements, it's time to figure out the cost of moving out. The amount you spend each week or fortnight or month or rent should be between 30 to 40% of your total take-home pay. So on a calculator, multiply your take-home pay by 0.3 and then 0.4. These two numbers will be the range of the amount of money you can spend on rent each pay period. You'll also need to think about bills though. Ultimately, you should have a fund that can be used to pay the first full bill of each of your utilities. My budgeting video has more information on how to budget for your bills, but you could be paying a bill for gas, electricity, water, internet, and even phone connection. Whether or not you need to pay for these bills will depend on the property you rent. Some places include some of these utilities in the rent you pay, while other places you will need to pay all of these yourself. When you do research and inspections of rental properties, you need to ask these questions. Now, to be safe, you should put aside each month about $150 for electricity, $100 for internet, $30 for gas, and about $100 for water. So having about $400 in your utilities account before you move out should cover you until your first set of bills arrives. Now, you want to be careful with electricity use as it peaks in the uncomfortable months where the temperature is too hot when we use air conditioning, or too cold when we use heaters. Once you have a history of bills, you can adjust the amount you put aside each month. You'll also be required to pay a bond. A bond is a deposit which is kept in trust, usually by a government agency. This protects the property owner against damages you might make to the property. If, at the end of your time renting the property, there is some damage that you don't fix and the owner needs to fix it, then they can use some of the money from the bond to pay for that damage. Essentially, apart from fair wear and tear, you need to leave the property the same as it was, or even cleaner, than when you moved in. At the end of your lease, you apply for the return of your bond, but be aware though, if you move from one property to another, you may need to find money to cover the bond of the new property before you get the bond back from the previous property. On top of bond and needing money for utilities, you may also need to pay rent in advance. Usually it's 1 month in advance, so on a property that has a rent of $1,200 per calendar month, you may need to pay up front $2,400. That's $1,200 for the first month's rent and $1,200 for the bond. You then need to pay $1,200 a month later, and then every month after that. So if we consider that your rent should be 30 to 40% of your take-home pay, you would need to be earning between $3,000 and $4,000 per month to afford a place that is renting at $1,200 a month. So the bond and first month's rent is 2 to 3 weeks of your total income. It can take a while to save up this much money, but persevere and you'll get there. The final consideration is your living expenses, groceries, transport costs like your car, your bike or public transport, your clothing, your budget for your social life, things like eating out and holidays. Come up with some rough numbers of how much of the remaining portion of your pay you'll want to put aside for each of these things. You'll need to adjust them frequently over the first year or two of moving out of home as you come to understand your spending habits. Now you've answered those 3 questions, you have the information to start looking for possible properties to rent or move into. For renting, you can use realestate.com.au or domain.com.au. On each site, you can select rent and then set filters such as suburbs, price, and the things such as the number of rooms, parking spaces, and bathrooms. For sharehouse listings, you can go to websites such as flatmatefinders.com.au, flatmates.com.au, sharehouses.com.au, or even on sites such as gumtree.com.au. Even realestate.com.au now has a section for sharehouse listings. Now, once you find some places that meet your requirements, you should inspect the properties and complete the formal application process. If you're successful, then you need to finalise the final step, furnishings. Now, you have to ask yourself, do I have the furnishings to set up my own place? You'll need to think about each room in a typical home. What are the items that you'll need in your new home? For instance, in a bedroom, you could have a bed, bedside tables, lamps, standing mirror, a dresser, a towel boy, and a chair. But of all these items, the most important is the bed. So when you're starting out, you need to have a bed. In the bathroom, you'll need towels. In the kitchen, you'll need a pot, a pan, cutlery, knives, forks, spoons, plates and bowls, and a cutting board. Something to drink out of, and a fridge, unless the property comes with one. Now, I think these are the bare essentials. Obviously, if you can afford other items, then it's great to have things like TVs, couches, washing machine, dining table. What you add on top of the basics relies on what you can afford. For beds and couches, I suggest buying new, while for other items you can make great savings by looking for second-hand items. Also, it's an idea to reach out to relatives to see if they want to rehome any old furniture they have. Now, if you're planning to move out of home far enough in advance, you can use birthdays and Christmas as a time to start collecting items for your new home. Ask for gifts of bedding, towels, kitchen items, or even money to go towards your moving out expenses. If you already have some furniture items, you need to make sure you know how big they are for when you do property inspections. It can be very frustrating to have to buy a new fridge because the one you already own doesn't fit in the space of your new home. Measure any furniture you own and take a tape measure to each inspection. Alternatively, measure how long your shoes are and use them to measure out spaces. walk heel to toe, and count how many shoes fit across the space. You then multiply this by the length of your shoe to find the total length. Now step 4 is the final step, moving. Once you've secured your new home and have organised furniture, you need to move in. You can either make the move yourself, hire a moving company to do it for you, or do a combination of both. If you're moving yourself, then you'll possibly need family or friends to help, and you might need to borrow or hire a trailer if you have a lot of stuff or items that won't fit in a car. Hiring movers is a cost that you'll need to weigh up or factor into your move out of home. So let me recap the 4 steps. First, you need a regular source of money. Secondly, you need to figure out what types of living arrangements will work for you. Third one is you need to organise furniture. And finally, number 4, you need to work out how you'll move to your new place. So leaving home can be easy if you plan and do it in a better way. There's many things to consider, and it might take you longer than you first thought, but it is an important part of the journey of a young man to becoming a better Aussie man. So, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep being a better Aussie man.